This is Hannah from Hull Beer Shop, and you're listening to Daftaboutcraft.
Daftaboutcraft is sponsored by Hull Beer Shop, based in Stourbridge in the West Midlands. You can find a huge selection of craft beers in-store and online. Check them out at hall-beer.com.
You're listening to Dave B. and Dave D. on Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.
It's that time of the month again. Welcome along to Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast. Here we are, 2/3 of the way through February, something like that, and this is episode 25. We've reached our quarter of a century. And as on every other episode, it's me, Dave D, joined by
Dave B.
And we've got all sorts of goodies coming up for you as usual. We have got a great interview with one of the characters of the craft beer scene, Donica Burke. He's been around the block a little bit and now he runs Crop Brewery, and he's got some very exciting news to tell you about. So he'll be joining us for all of that and lots of stories as well. He's a master storyteller.
Yeah, Donica is a born showman, I think. If he didn't want to do this, he could have easily done sort of after dinner speaking or something, couldn't he? He's very good. I had the pleasure of meeting him sort of just before Christmas when I came to see you, and he's a really nice guy, and as you say, can tell a mean story. We also have regular favourites like Brew to Me, which we'll get to very soon, and Hypel Tripe. Hypel Tripe's slightly different this episode, as it also ties in with our first drink along of the year in association with our sponsors, Hull Beer. So we have two beers, which will be part of the drink along. The third beer, and you can buy the trio from Hull Beer online. The third beer is actually our Hypel Tripe beer as well.
So a little bit different. We've mixed it up a little bit. So what that basically means is that you can get involved in not just one part of the podcast, but two parts this time. So how exciting. And we'd like to get straight into it. So without further ado, it's time for our very first feature. We always kick off with this one. It's time for Brew to Me. Over to you, Dave, where you crack open a beer from a brewery we haven't tried before.
When in doubt, when I need to find a new brewery in the UK, one of my go-tos is to go to Hydrology's website. Hydrology is Andy. He's up in South Shields, and he really champions those craft breweries that are up there in the north. We're sort of talking Newcastle way. I've had quite a few beers from there over the episodes, I think, that I've debuted on here, and it not really had a bad one. Had some really good stuff. So hopefully this carries on that fine tradition. And this comes from Firebrick Brewery, who are based in Blaydon-on-Tyne. They started in 2013. That's when they started brewing. So they're sort of quite trad to look out on their website. The website is, in the nicest possible way, a little bit out of date. The socials are up to date. I can see they are doing stuff. They've got some core bits, and then as time has gone on, like a lot of breweries, they've developed. So the heritage is their trad type stuff, and then they've done Mystic series as well, which I think is a bit more seasonal. Mm-hmm. And that's all available on keg and on cask and things like that. But they've also got keg and they've got can. And can is where, of course, where I'm at. And I have got Jaffa Gaffer, which is a 4.6% orange Kolsch, which, as it just says on the can, a fizzy orange lager beer. What's not to like?
Yeah, when you talked about Jaffa cakes, and I thought maybe it was going to be like a 5 or 6% stout or something. I hadn't noticed he'd poured it into a glass. I'm not being very observant. An orange Kolsch, right, okay. So quite a summery kind of drink then, rather than where we are now.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit out of place for deepest, darkest February. Now, I'm interested to know how they've done their orange here.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, and it's a really difficult one. It can taste soapy or not orange enough, and, quite a few ways it can turn out, and some of them aren't necessarily what you would like in a beer.
And I think it's really subjective, because I think certain people react really well to orange essence. The best chocolate orange stout I know of my head is a Left-Handed Giant. They've done a few variants of it, and they did a chocolate orange one, and that had orange oil, and I loved it, but other people said it was really soapy.
Soapy, yeah.
Unfortunately for me, this is soapy, but that doesn't necessarily mean it probably is. Someone else might get it and it's not. My first sniff was a bit orangey. Now it smells more like washing up liquid, like the orange washing up liquid you get. It's not hugely off-putting, but it's also not what I want my beer to smell of.
No, but because you've had sort of orange in your beers before, you did know that this is how it could end up.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that is how it's ended up. There's a little bit of the taste is a little bit soapy to start with. It's a nice light lager. I can't knock that. The Kolsch style is done pretty well. I am keen to stress, you might have this and you might think it's really sort of full of oranges and it tastes like fresh orange or something, and someone else might have the same.
Do you remember when we had Brew to Me? We both did the same one, and it was Doc's beers from Grimsby. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't over enamoured with mine, and you weren't with yours, but actually you had mine a little later.
Yeah, the watermelon salt lager. And really I thought that was brilliant. Tasted of everything. And
I also had another one of theirs just a few weeks ago, and it was great. So it's difficult, isn't it, to take one beer in isolation from a brewery you haven't tried before?
No, it doesn't put me off, because I noticed on their website there's a few bits and bobs they do of other beers which are quite interesting. They've sort of got a traditional porter, their orange and coriander wheat beer from 2018. We're going back a little while now. Little Belgium traditional wheat beer that came first at a Camera festival in Northumberland in 2018, and their Sugar Spun was the best flavoured porter or stout 2019 at the same. That was a 5.2 candy floss flavoured stout, which sounds pretty nice. Yeah. So they've definitely got the heritage and they definitely can brew. So I'm not going to write them off. I'd quite happily try some of their other stuff. And if I was up that way, I'd seek it out. They've got a handcrafted black lager as well, which is sort of number 9, which is for Alan Shearer related for Newcastle. So, you know, they seem really keen on their local heritage. They're obviously well established. They've been going, you know, closer to 10 years now, and I'm not going to be put off by one beer, but unfortunately for me, this one just doesn't quite work.
Okay, well, let's see if we can get some more positive results with mine. Now, this was a last-minute decision. I'd got one lined up. It was a Saison from a little Dutch brewery, and I think I'll keep that for next time, because I was in Hall earlier on, and Hannah said, "Oh, have you seen these cans from a brewery called Alter Ego from Derbyshire, apparently?" So I said, right, I'll have that. That'll do for Brew to Me. And £3.75 for the can. You don't find many sort of craft beers for under £4 these days. And what we've got here is a 4.5% IPA called Forcefield, brewed with Mosaic and Eldorado. I'm expecting a bit of a fruity hit from it. I was really excited when I saw this. I thought, Derbyshire, that's not a million miles away from where I live. Why have I never heard of this brewery? And it just makes me think how many hundreds of breweries there are that we've yet to come across.
Well, I found exactly the same just from moving to a new part of Suffolk. And I mean, I only mean that with work. I haven't even moved and moved house or anything yet, but just moving, and then sort of my natural curiosity overtakes me, and I'll sort of be Googling is there any craft beer nearby or anything. And all of a sudden, because I'm nearer Cambridge, it's throwing up all these places that I wasn't aware of. So it's great.
It's like peel back a few layers and you find something new. It's great, isn't it? Right, just looking at the date on it, best before the 12th of January 23. So I'm presuming they put 12 months on that, and that it was brewed middle of January, so about a month old. It looks more orangey on the screen there to you than it actually is. It's a bit paler than that. Looks nice and light. Let's see.
What did we have again? Eldorado
and Mosaic. So the back end of it is quite bitter. There's your Mosaic. Mm-hmm. And then the bit of fruitiness at the front is your Eldorado. For me, it's a bit more bitter than fruity, but it's very easy drinking, as you'd expect for a 4.5% pale. Yeah, that's very nice.
Does it hold together? Because I've noticed actually, we in our last episode when we were talking to Mammoth and Primordial, which I since did buy 6 cans.
This is like a breakthrough moment we've got to tell you about, because we had Mammoth on the last podcast, and Dave never does this. But what did you do, Dave, when it finished?
I went and bought 6 of the same beer, which I never do as a checker, but I was so impressed with that beer that I had to have more of it. And I since have had another one. I'm sort of spacing them out, and it was actually a bit better in some ways because
Really?
the fruitiness had changed a little bit. But anyway, it was so full for 4.1%. So I'm always a bit wary when it's lower, but it's just going to go to wishy-washiness. Does your alter ego, or does that sort of hold together?
No, it's holding together quite nicely.
Nice.
And haven't had a sip for about 30 seconds. Sort of bitterness is still at the back of the throat. I can still taste that. I think the telling point is when you get a bit further down the can, you've had a bit more. Is it still the same as that first mouthful? Every indication is good so far. I'd love to know more about these guys, but
they do have a website. I was just having a look while you're sort of telling us about the beer. Some interesting stuff. I mean, there's some stuff which would be right up your street. The pricing is incredibly reasonable.
It is, yeah. I noticed that, but it doesn't tell you much about them on there.
That just feels like it's probably a call to arms for us then, and a
get hold of them.
Yeah, clear plea that if you'd like to come on a future episode,
we'll have you.
More than welcome.
What I did find out, however, is that while they haven't got a tap room, they have actually got their own pub in Derbyshire, and it is called the Tip Inn in Loscoe in Derbyshire. They sell all sorts in there: Thornbridge, Full Circle, Wild Child recently, Brass Castle, Elusive there, and of course their own alter ego beers as well. So it sounds like there might be a bit of a story behind these guys.
Well, that's quite a nice little discovery it looks like you've made.
Yeah, I'm very pleased with that. That's good. That's holding together nicely. Well, the can's nearly empty, actually. That's very quick for me. Yeah, I'd be very interested to try more. So watch this space, and let's try and get them on the podcast, and they can tell you all about themselves.
Daft About Craft, the craft beer podcast.
Oh, going back a couple of months, we had the pleasure of meeting one of craft beer's real characters, Donica Burke. He was in town doing a collab with Green Duck, and we met him in the Hall Beer Shop. We thought, yeah, this guy, we've got to get him on the podcast, got to get him on. And here he is joining us today. How you doing?
All good. How's it going with you guys?
Very good. We're ready for your stories and your news as well, because you've got great news about crop.
So I've just taken on the lease of the previous brewery of Mackie Mackie. They were brewing in the back of a pub in Southsea in Portsmouth called the Greenwich. They left there in June last year after a crowdfunding campaign. So they bought Days Old Brew Kit, and they've moved to a bigger site outside the city.
Oh, okay.
Basically, I went down to Portsmouth in January, handing out a few can samples, just see if I could drum up some sales for crop. And I just stumbled upon this pub, and I was like, "Oh, there's a brew kit there." Like, "Oh yeah, it's, the owner wants to sell it." Why? Like, "Oh, there's no one using it."
You seem to have this canny knack of being in the right place at the right time.
It's the same with Dig Bruco. I was about to leave. I was about to leave England and actually go to China and teach English. It was a really random time for me. I just split up with my ex-wife, so I did a TEFL course, and I was like, "Oh, I'll go to China and teach some English, Chinese people." Even though, like, I don't know how Chinese people with Irish accents speak English.
Yeah, I'd love to have seen how that panned out.
If there'd have been like this specific class which could speak sort of Chinese English with an Irish accent, which would have been quite exciting.
So I was doing all the visa and everything. One of my mates who used to own Tilt in Birmingham.
Yeah.
So he came to me and said, "Oh, there's a new brewery opened up in Digby. Okay, let's go down and see what it's like." So we popped down there, and they had signed the taps to Heineken. So most of their beer taps were Heineken. They didn't have actual Heineken, but like Heineken brands like Alpha Game,
right.
Leffe, and stuff like that. They had their own lager. So they had two lagers. So they had two beer like draft taps for themselves, a lager tap and an imperial lager tap. And then they had 4 Cascale handfuls. All the pump clips were all drawn with Sharpie. The brew kit looked really nice. I was like, this is weird. And I tasted the beer. I wasn't too impressed with the beer. Sorry?
We should just tell people this is Dig Brew you're talking about in the very early days of Dig Brew, wasn't
it? Yeah. So this was literally a month or two into opening of Dig Brew. I tasted the beer. I was like, yeah, this place has got a lot more potential. So I went up to the bar and I asked who owns this place, and Ollie came over. So Ollie is the owner of Dig Brew, and he was about 24 at the time. Like, he was really young when he set it up. He was oh, nice to meet you, whatever. I was like, this place is amazing, but I told him what I thought of his beer.
What was the reaction?
He was like, "Who are you?" And I'd already started homebrewing, and my ex-wife developed a brand for my homebrew. So it was called Ershul, which meant in progress in Irish. I was working James Italian at the time, the Italian restaurant, and I was kind of selling my wares under the table to some customers and staff, selling a little bit of homebrew here and there. And I did a collab brew with a brewery called Sacre Brew that used to be in Wolverhampton.
Okay, yeah.
I gave her a taste of my homebrew. She really liked my homebrew, and we developed the recipe and we did a collab. I still have one bottle of it actually. We did that, and that launched with like co-branded, obviously collab, and then that was December 2016 was when I launched my first commercial brew. In the summer of 2017, I launched one with a brewery that was in Acock's Green in Birmingham, called Thousand Trades.
Yep.
Also no longer exists, but that was also done as a collab. But that one, I did the recipe, and I created everything for that beer. It was called "Hello, my name is Istvan. Yes, please."
I won't ask the story behind that.
It was a guy that came over when I was working in James Italian. It was a guy that came over from Hungary, and he came over from James Italian in Hungary, and that was the only thing he said. He didn't speak any English except for "Hello, my name is Istvan. Yes, please." And
what a great story for the name of a beer. I love that.
I asked him, "Is it okay if I put your name a beer after you and put you on a pump clip?" Because I had a sketch of him on the pump clip, and it's like, "Oh yeah, that's fine as long as you make me look like a cat." I was like, why am I making you look like a cat? It's like, "Oh, my nickname in school was Pishti, which is the Hungarian for cat." So I did those two brews. I also I used Birmingham Brewing Co.'s pilot kit in the summer of 2017, and I put a beer on called Roadman Rich. That was on in a beer festival with "Hello, my name is Istvan" in Moseley. So I had two beers on that summer, and I was looking to make it a commercial thing. I'd only homebrewed, and I'd only done those few collabs, and yeah, I couldn't get a job as a brewer. So that's when I went to do the teach English as a foreign language. It was October 2017 when I went into the Brugo. So going back to when he said, "Who are you?" I had business cards done, my Ershul branding. I'm a brewer, mate. And he said, "Do you want to go? Do you think you can do better?" Yeah.
And the rest is history almost then.
So I was about to leave England for China because I couldn't get a job as a brewer, which is what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a waiter anymore. And then it just happened like 2 or 3 months before I was due to go to China. And then we did a Dig Bruco collab called "Have You Seen Tom's Snapchat?" That went down really well. It came up to, I think it was like 3 weeks before I was due to fly to China. And Ollie from Dig Bruco came to me. He's like, "You can't go to China. I need you here."
It's like sliding doors, isn't it? Your life could have been so different.
Yeah, I know. I could be over in China teaching little Chinese kids.
And probably how to brew, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but the thing is, when I started in Dig Bruco, I'd homebrewed 7 batches. I basically got to use Dig Bruco as a big homebrew kit to teach myself how to brew. So when I went to Dig Bruco, I had full reins, do whatever I wanted.
So while you were there at Dig Brew, what was a standout beer that you had a hand in?
California. So California.
That's the sour, isn't it?
Yeah. So they've
just released a new batch recently. Yeah.
Yeah, they still brew that. California and Optimo are the. So the first Optimo popped up my timeline it was 4 years ago, about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
it popped up in my memories. It was 4 years ago since the first Optimo. Originally, it was just a single hop Citra IPA.
It's changed quite a bit over the years.
Yeah, they've muddled with it
So fast forward a bit in time. So you were at Dig Brew. You had you founded these beers that are still going today and are great beers. What happened when you left Dig Brew? Where did you go to next?
2018. The head brewer that was there left and went to Beavertown. So Ollie made me the head brewer. I was doing most of the recipes anyway, so it wasn't really much of a difference. And then the Raise the Bar competition came up so that we entered that in February 2019. We won that. We were one of 4 breweries in the country that got through to that. Like everything started moving a lot faster.
Yeah.
And then I got approached to the a brewery called Evolution, which had just set up in Shrewsbury in January of that year. They came over and they tasted my beers, and they offered me a lot more money than I was on to go to Shrewsbury. I went straight to Ollie, and I spoke to Ollie, basically jumped ship from Big Brew. That was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made.
Do you regret that decision looking back now, or did that lead to where you are now?
It's led to where I'm now.
Yeah,
I think that's one thing that I want to talk about in the brewing industry, because so many people want to get into the brewing industry, because obviously you've got like a massive amount of people that are enthusiastic about home brewing. The wage threshold is quite low, so there's a lot of working poor in the brewing industry getting paid really rubbish wages. They're not able to afford to drink craft beer, which is the industry they're in.
Yeah, it's not a cheap pastime, is it?
Yeah, it's not. But the people that make it surely should be
able to enjoy
rewarded.
it. Yeah.
The people that make Ferraris, I'm sure they get paid handsomely. I would classify craft beer as a luxury industry. Most luxury industries, the people that work in that industry are quite handsomely rewarded. And it doesn't happen in the craft beer industry because breweries see that there is a lot of people that want to get into it. So they know that...
Yeah, they can use that to their advantage almost.
Yeah, they can. And number 2, I think breweries would rather throw an extra 20 kilos of hops into something.
Yeah, than pay their staff a bit more.
So you've got people throwing crazy amounts of hops into beers and getting like 40% yield, but then the person making that beer is on 25,000 a year. There needs to be some kind of balance somewhere.
That's never cropped up before.
Talked about very much. No, it hasn't come up before, and it makes sense because I mean, I definitely have looked in. I've changed jobs recently, but before then, I wouldn't have been looking for brewing jobs, but I was for sure looking for jobs within craft beer because I wanted to try and find something. And the industry outside of your really, really big boys, and then even that comes with a lot of sort of strings attached. It doesn't pay very well yet. Now, I know there's a lot of very small operations that probably can't afford to, but equally, for what they want, it did at times didn't feel very realistic. The money didn't match what you were sort of being asked to do. Yeah,
it's a really interesting topic actually.
I think Bow City and Cloudwater are really making strides in this.
That's what I was just about to say. They've been quite vocal recently about how much they pay their staff when they've advertised roles at the breweries. They've told you how much it is, how much the wages are. Vault City have just gone on to a 4-day week as well. Yeah. For all their staff, which is, the people who make this wonderful beer have got to have a life as well, haven't they?
Yeah, you got to have a balance. If you're happy in your job and you've got enough to live a fulfilled life at home, it all comes around full circle. Like you got money, you're comfortable at home, you're happy at work.
Yeah,
you're happy at work, you're comfortable at home, and it all kind of leads around into one loop. The majority of brewing companies out there, like the pay is diabolical. Except for they seem to value sales staff a lot more.
Yeah.
A brewery will chuck 35-40 grand to a salesperson, but then they'll pay their brewer 25 grand.
I think that's the same across a lot of industries, isn't it? You're like our dream because we don't even have to ask you any questions. You just keep talking. It's amazing. You can just sit here drinking and you'll just run the show. It's great.
Yeah, I have written down things so I don't go off pint.
You managed to get a job at Dig Brew. You became their head brewer. Then you went to Shrewsbury to Evolution. And what was the next chain in the story? What happened next?
Oh, we went off tangent a bit.
I love going off tangent. It's great. It's great fun. So it sounds like you've had to do a lot of sort of thinking on your feet as you've worked through the industry here. Just almost been thrown in at the deep end with some of these jobs.
Yeah, for sure. Like at the Bruco, it was all a massive learning curve because I didn't even know like much about sparging and liquoring back. It was a lot of one of the main things I think I learned a lot from was collabs. So in Dig Bruco, we did quite a few collabs. Went to beer festivals. Just speaking and exchanging knowledge with other brewers has made me a much better brewer.
So you've basically taken lots of knowledge along your route and used it to get to where you are now.
Yeah, basically.
I should say that as we're talking now, me and Dave, we're both drinking your second release from Crop, and this is called Drive Through Andy. Now, I had this when we first met back in December. It's changed quite a lot between then and now. It is so soft.
Pour myself one.
Well, you've got to have one at the same time, haven't you? What do you make of it, Dave?
I hadn't had a look. I just looked at the back now to see what was in here, hop-wise, and I would have been so off. It was quite embarrassing. I was sure there was a Zaka in it because of how sort of soft and fruity it was, and it's not. It's Idaho 7 on one side. And this is actually something I really want to pick your brains about because I've only seen the hot side, cold side hop sing done by Verdant, and I've thought that's quite gimmicky because I have no idea what it means and they don't really explain it. So I'd love to know what that means, the whole hot side, cold side thing.
So hot side is when the wort is hot, basically kettle, and cold side is in the fermenter.
Gotcha.
When it's cold.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So when if you think of it, kettles are hot.
Yep.
Fermenters are cold.
Yep.
Fermenters for cold side, kettle for hot side.
And what does that bring to it then, in terms of the process? How does that sort of help bring everything out of the hop?
With the hot side, that can be in the boil. In the boil, you're extracting bitterness out of the hops. In the whirlpool, which is when you spin the liquid around to separate out proteins that form during the boil, and any hops that you use in the boil, you do the whirlpool to spin them out. But if you add hops during this whirlpool, then you extract a lot more subtle flavors out of the hops. So that's where you get most of the juicy and fruity flavors. In the dry hop, it's predominantly aroma. A lot of brewers make the mistake of neglecting the whirlpool and loading up the dry hop. But if you load up the dry hop and neglect the whirlpool, you'll have a beer that's like, obviously smell and taste is quite related. So you'll have beer that in the first week or two, it's massively in your face and it's like, it smells amazing. And that kind of tells your brain that it tastes amazing. After the dry hops died off, there's nothing behind it.
Which is definitely which is definitely a sensation I've had with beers, and I think you probably had it as well, Dave. You have one, you open the can up, you get hit with a load of fruit or something, for example, on the nose, taste it very, very little. Yeah. So would that be that you've done a load of dry hopping, but you perhaps didn't fill the whirlpool up, and then that's just letting it down? Yeah,
so the dry hop will always dissipate. That's why the whole drink fresh thing is there. You'll extend the beer's shelf life if you treat the whirlpool as a component that is as important as the dry hop. If this beer was only dry hopped, it would taste of nothing now.
So in actual fact, the whirlpool is the key to all of this.
I've always been massively for loading up the whirlpool because I think that's where you extract the most flavors.
Yeah.
The thing is with the whirlpool as well, it's generally around 70 degrees, like between 70 and 78 degrees. So you're infusing the oils into the beer, so it becomes one. Whereas the dry hop, because it's not hot, they don't combine as well. So it's more likely to dissipate.
You know, dry hopping became a bit of a thing, didn't it? You get your double dry hopped IPAs and whatnot, and I do like them, and I think they can work. So I guess they do have their own way of doing it. Do you have to be just sort of quite clear that this is what I've done? I've done a dry hopped beer, so this is what you're going to get, rather than trying to dress it up maybe as something else?
There's a right way and there's a wrong way.
You just say it how it is. That's fine.
Yeah. So like a double dry hopped will still have should still have hops in the whirlpool because it's important to layer the beer. Obviously, beers change a lot over time. but once one layer goes away, there has to be something behind it. The double dry hop thing is mainly you're adding hops during fermentation. You get a thing called biotransformation. So the yeast and the enzymes in the hop interact, and they pull out a lot more different flavor compounds out of the hops. After the fermentation, then you dry hop again, and that adds more aroma. So it's just different layers of flavor that you can do.
Obviously, we've talked at length there about the whirlpool, which is something you. So when people buy a crop beer, they can expect a real sort of layered experience, I guess.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that it's going to be really bad in 3 months. It's just going to be different.
It is definitely different 3 months on that. That is really different. And it was, for me, it's better now than it was 2 or 3 months ago.
When it was fresh, the aroma took over.
Yeah, but like you say, because taste and smell are so entwined, it's difficult to see the wood for the trees sometimes, isn't it? Your senses can be overtaken almost.
Now what you're tasting is mainly Idaho 7 from the whirlpool, because it was just Idaho 7 in the whirlpool, whereas the Rawaka is kind of taking a back seat. The Rawaka and the Citra.
It's fascinating. I could talk about this all night.
You see, we didn't expect a brewing lesson on this episode. It was great. Right, so talking about your brewing back catalogue. So you went to Tappet next. That's where the story. That's where the story goes into.
Sorry, there's a few different things in evolution. I go back to. So I go back to evolution. So I haven't really spoken much about evolution.
Yep. Okay. Yeah.
So I went there in August 2019. They were scoring really, really badly on Untapped. They were on their second or third head brewer, and like when I went in, I dumped every fermenter down the drain. When I had my interview there, the head brewer that I replaced, he was the owner said to him, "Oh, where's the double IPA? Let's go taste it." And he's like, "Oh, it's in this fermenter, and this fermenter." And I was like, "Why is it in 3 fermenters?" "Oh, it's in this one unfiltered, it's in this one filtered, and it's in this one a mix of the filtered and unfiltered."
Now, even we know that sounds a bit weird.
Why do you filter some of it and then mix it back in? Like, it just didn't make any sense. And then like we tasted it, but like it wasn't great. Like we tasted each one, and neither of them were any good. And the owner said, "Oh, so what ABV is it?" So, "Oh, it's 5.8%." He said he thought the recipe was for 2,500 liters, but the recipe was actually for 1,600 liters. So he obviously didn't put enough grain in. It was like we started building momentum. We did a collab with Attic. We did a collab with Twisted Barrel. We had guys from Lochgill in Ireland fly over for a collab. We did a collab with Padstow. Things were going in the right direction. We're talking to because the evolution was really big. It was 18,000 square foot unit. So they were talking to supermarkets. That seemed to be going in the right direction. We went down to Brew London in February 2020. Oh, actually, rewind to November. Sorry, November 2019, when the founders went to prison for fraud.
It's so weird. I was just about to say to you, so what went wrong at Evolution? And I think that may be the answer.
Yeah, so when the owners went to prison for fraud, and when he got sentenced, we got phone calls from loads of bars, and they were like, so our sales seem to be going quite well, as we thought, and we were supposed to be doing loads of these tap takeovers in the month like that he got sentenced. So in that November, December, he had apparently arranged loads of tap takeovers. Then he went to prison, and we got phone calls from angry landlords going, "I've got a pallet of beer here that I never ordered." We had to repatriate loads of these pallets of beer from all these bars across Cambridge and Ipswich and stuff. Absolute nightmare. 2 weeks into the lockdown, the guy with the money again, he rang us and he said, this ain't gonna be over for a year or two. I'm pulling the pin. He's I'm closing it down. He paid me and the managing director for 5 months. Yeah, so over the next 5 months, we were winding everything down and trying to sell the equipment and just tying up loose ends and stuff. A thing of pride or whatever. He didn't want to just put the company into
Yeah, he
administration.
didn't leave you high and dry. Yeah.
He paid all the hop companies, all the anyone that he owed money to. He paid them what he owed, and the company is now dormant. Like it's still so it's still registered. And over the next few months, I had a few random job offers from different breweries. I did consultancy for a brewery that was meant to open in Oswestry. Decided against it, and an Irish brewer that I can't name that wanted to open a British arm. That never ended up going ahead, but they hired me as a consultant. I did consultancy for a brewery in Walsall called New Invention. I did consultancy for Play Bruco in Middlesbrough. So I went up to Play Bruco about three times and brewed 3 beers each time I went up there.
New Invention and Play Brew, both breweries doing very well now.
Yeah, so I did all the recipes for Play from May 2020 until about April 2021. So I was writing all the recipes and someone else was brewing more. Right. So I went up there 3 times, as I said, and brewed. But the rest of the time, there was someone else that he hired in to brew the beers. Oh, Somar Brewing Company in Birmingham.
Birmingham, yeah.
So I designed their brew kit.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've been around a bit, haven't you? Crikey.
Yeah, so the one in Oswestry, I helped with planning permission. New Invention and Play Bruco, I helped with recipe development. Somar, I designed the brew kit.
So you've been involved in lots of different areas of advancing lots of other breweries.
So June 2020, a month before my 5 months of free money basically was coming to an end. My mate messaged me and he's like, "Oh, would you move down to Southampton for the same money you're on now?"
Yes.
Maybe. I was I've never been to Southampton before. So Play Bruco, they couldn't offer me as much as I was on in Evolution. So I was considering going up to Middlesbrough, but it would have meant £13,000 pay decrease per year, which is quite sizable.
Yes.
So I went down and met this brewery I'd never heard of. So I Tap It. Never heard of them. When my mate told me they were looking for a brewer, I looked up at the website. I was like, never heard of this brewery. And generally, as a brewer, I know breweries that most people haven't heard of. I've
you
heard
know what's
of
going
them.
on, yeah.
Yeah, I've got my finger quite close to the pulse, and I know when new breweries are shooting up. I keep quite a close eye on social media and whatnot. So I was never heard of this brewery in Southampton. Went down at an interview, and what really interested me was they had plans to rebrand the whole thing and grow and take on another brew pub side and basically grow through a chain of bars. I quite like the idea of keeping the loop closed, and I like what Somar is doing in Birmingham. So he's got his brewery that feeds his bars. Obviously, he sells to the bar, and then the bar makes money on the. So I want that idea for Crop eventually to.
It's a good model, isn't it?
Yeah, to have the brewery supplying the bars that you own, and you're keeping all the money in one loop, and then from that extra money, you can afford to pay the staff better. You can afford to do better for the environment, do better for charities. I think a brewery should be a hub within the community that takes care of the community and its environment.
So it's while you were at Tap It that you sensed the opportunity for Crop to come into existence.
Yeah. So the whole plan that was set up when I had the interview is starting to take shape now. So in the next few months, the whole company will be rebranded. Next month, they're taking on a new prominent city centre brew pub site in Southampton. So taking on another site, and that will become the main hub of Tap It, or what it will be called when it's rebranded. And then that will be pushed out through a chain of bars that already exists.
As it stands now, you've got your own brewery, Crop. Are you still involved with Tap It?
Yeah, so I'm still the head brewer of Tap It, and both breweries have got 2 completely different directions.
Mm-hmm.
The Tap It one is interesting from the point of view that it's going to be rolled out across I think it's 12, 13 bars all at once. It's going to grow really rapidly all at once. So it's an interesting project to be involved in from that point of view, that it's like they've been building up, because the guy that owns Tappet is a property developer. So he's been building up this bank of property to roll everything out just like in one fell swoop. I like the idea of being involved in branding. Like, branding is very important to me. Like, branding is what makes people pick up the beer. Like, yeah, obviously the beer needs to be good.
You've got to get them to pick it up in the first place, haven't you? Then the beer's got to be good.
So it's something I've constantly been pushing and discussing with the owner of Tappet, and I think it's finally taken shape that I'll be involved in these branding discussions where we come up with a brand that has an appeal and a story behind it. It will be more focused on a mainstream audience.
You're one very busy person as it stands then, because you've got one foot in Tappet and another foot in your own business.
I'll be brewing for Tappet in 2 different locations. So in the new brew pub, we'll be brewing lager, and then in the current Tappet brewery, we'll be brewing the craft stuff. At nighttime and weekends, I'll be brewing craft beer in the Greenwich and Southsea. So
you're not going to get a lot of sleep, are you, in the next few months? I don't think. So looking further ahead, where do you want to be in, say, 2, 3, 5 years time?
I think in 2 years time, I will be at a stage where I will have outgrown the brew pub. Obviously, I'll still supply the brew pub, like the Greenwich and Southsea, but I will be looking for a site to build a brewery. I'm still not sure whether that's going to be in Southampton or in the Midlands. Okay. I would like it to be in the Midlands.
I just want somewhere to go where I can just have a beer and somebody can tell me stories all night long. Be ace.
Bedtime stories. Yeah, so I would love to have a brewery in Shrewsbury. I think Shrewsbury is prime to.
Yeah, there's a little scene that's starting to emerge in Shrewsbury as well. So I can see where you're coming from there. Yeah,
like Tap and Can. There's amazing.
Yeah, love Tap and Can. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you got Tap and Can, House of Grain, Sophie's, and Oil as well. Like, so the last beer, the Drive Brandy, most of my sales were around the south, around Southampton and Portchester and Portsmouth. Mm-hmm. And then there's a few in the Midlands, but I suppose that's because I'm not in the Midlands.
You're not here at the moment.
Yeah. So it's like, because I'm down here, I'm selling more beer down here. But yeah, I don't know where that brewery is going to be.
And so you've released 2 beers as it stands under the Crop banner. Yeah. There was Loud Noises and then Drive Brandy, which we're drinking now. And now you're in the Greenwich. You're going to be releasing 4 beers on keg each month. Is that the plan?
4 beers a month. The first pours will always be at the Greenwich in Southsea. Mm-hmm. So they'll get the first pour of any beer, because obviously it's brewed there, so they get first dibs. The first 4 beers. The first one is going to be called "I Like Your Daps."
Should we ask about that or not? I don't...
Yeah. It's not rude or nothing. It's Bristolian slang for trainer. I went over to my girlfriend's dad's house one day, and he came out and he just came up to me and went, "I like your daps." I was just looking at him going,
I wonder if he ever thought there'd be a beer named after that. I don't think so.
Yeah, he is loving it.
I bet.
We showed him the pump clip. I Like Your Daps. It originally stands for Dunlop Athletic Plimsoll.
Okay, right.
And they made him in Bristol, and it was the original trainer. And then I'm doing an 8% dip I call Token Turquoise Targa. The next one is a 5.8% IPA called We Built the World, and that's based on Irish immigrants basically building railroads and bridges and skyscrapers and whatever. And then there's a 6.5% single hop Citra IPA called Subscribe to Citra. So I will be canning in the summer, I think, in the Greenwich. I'm going to get a small scale canning line or canning machine.
You've got to do a sour. Given your history with sours and Digbury, you've got to do a sour.
Yeah. So the next 4 beers. There's 2 sours.
Oh, excellent.
So I'm doing some IPAs and pales first, just so I can get the hang of the kit.
Sure.
See what's what, and then I'm going to do 2 mixed firm fruited sours.
Oh, nice. Dave, is there anything you want as well? What do you fancy?
Well, I just wanted to know, because I feel it'd be silly not to ask, when is grand opening night?
I'm currently waiting for Hoplex, which is the kit manufacturer, to send some parts down so I can start brewing. So I'm not going to have I can't say when the launch night is going to be until I know when I'm starting brewing. So I've actually got all the grain, all the yeast, and all the cleaning products and everything on site in Southsea in Portsmouth, in the Greenwich. There's some bits of the kit missing that I've ordered. So whenever those bits arrive, which hopefully will be the start of next week, then I can start brewing. And then on socials I was
going to say, people just need to follow your socials, don't they?
So at Crop Beer Co, I'll be letting people know my first beers will be pouring. And
I'm very tempted to make a trip to Southsea. This could be an awesome night, couldn't it?
On Monday, I'm meeting people to do signage for the window and everything. So on the outside, I'm painting it either the crop blue or the orange. I'm going to paint the wood around the window and the emergency exits and stuff. So the owner told me tonight that I can make it my own.
Free reign. So if people who aren't in your neck of the woods want to get hold of your beers, Drive Through Andy is still around, isn't it?
Yeah, Drive Through Andy is still available on the website, cropbeer.co.uk.
Get yourself a few cans, because...
And you can get the glass as well.
Yeah, I mean, the glass is ace. I've had 2 cans. I've had 2 cans while I've been talking, and it's really gone down a treat.
It's
really good beer.
Nice beer. Whoever comes to your pub just needs to know that, you know, if you're not brewing and you're serving or something, just sort of pull up a chair and enjoy a night with it, because you'll be there. You won't leave. You'll be there till kicking out time. So,
I'm definitely going to have a launch night, and so someone might give me a microphone.
Look, you've taken us through a whole realm of stories. It's been a wonderful chance to talk to you. I've enjoyed that, Dave. Have you?
Yeah, no, that's been brilliant. It's I can tell it's obviously shaped where you are now and what you're doing now, and I just really hope that everything carries on and it all just kicks off. And this time next year, we're sort of talking loads about crop because of what you're doing down in Southsea and beyond.
It's time for the part of the podcast now that we call Tried and Tested, where we tell you about our favourite beer since our last episode. Dave Beacon, kick us off.
Yes, it's a bit of an odd one. As I was just talking off air before we did this section, I said I haven't had any real bad beers in the last few weeks, but I also haven't had anything really, really amazing. But the one beer I could sort of remember when I was thinking back actually comes from Germany, and it is craft, but it's not quite craft in the craft British sense that we would have it. So my tried and tested beer is a Weizenhels from Sebaldus, who are based in Fürth, which is in Bayern, in sort of Bavaria, Germany. If you like Hefeweizes, so you basically want to like banana wheat beer, because that is what, when the style's done really well, that's what it's like. I know we do get British breweries sort of doing their take on German styles, but I sort of am a bit of a sucker for the traditional German craft, because it's sort of how I got into all of this. And
you only have to hear the words German craft and you've got your wallet out, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. I'm a bit of a sucker for it, and I've really sort of been craving it for the last few weeks. Not quite sure why. So I had this. It was part of, and it is still part of. It's still available actually. Hall have got this and some other really good stuff, which I'm sort of slowly working my way through. It is just a really, really, really good example of the style. It's so thick, it's so light, it's got so much banana going on. It's just a really, really good beer. It's also slightly stronger than normal for a wheat beer, as it comes in at 6%, but you'd never know it. I imagine having a few of these on tap would be amazing. So if you've never had a wheat beer or a Hefeweiss or something like that, and you're just wondering, Sebaldus Weizenhels Hefe is one to have a little look out for. And as I say, it's available at Hall Beer.
Excellent. And, well, my favourite beer since the last episode is one that I also had at Hall Beer Shop, and it was a Cloudwater. They did an event with Cloudwater where Connor from Cloudwater came down and talked us through 5 different beers that we got on tap. And we ended the evening with an 11.5% Imperial Stout with coffee, cacao, vanilla and tonka. So obviously, I'm going to be all over it, aren't I? There's no doubt about that. But it was wonderfully superb. It was the full 5 out of 5 jobby on Untapped straight away, no thinking about it. As Connor himself said, we also had a barley wine. He said that's sort of, the barley wine is for next to the fire, and then to finish the night, this is what you go with. And he was right. It's so warming. Aged in cognac barrels, cherries, cranberries, macadamia, the full works. Anything you could think of that should be in an Imperial Stout, it was in there. But so wonderfully done. All the flavours complemented each other, and it was so good. I bought another bottle afterwards and drank that as well. And for fans of the Daftaboutcraft and Hall Beer Drink Along, you'll be glad to know it's back in town. Here we are, the first Drink Along of 2022, where we get a few beers off the shelves at Hall. Hopefully you've seen us advertise them on our socials. You've got your 15% off, and you're ready to drink them with us. And like we alluded to at the top of the show, there's a little bit of a difference this time, because we're actually doing just the 2 beers in the Drink Along. And the third beer you bought in your pack, we're going to have as our hype or tripe beer. And we'll tell you all about the reasons for that a little bit later when we get round to it. But we've got these hopefully wonderful beers in front of us. We've got a sour from Pastore. We've got a gold top dipper from Track in Manchester. And then a stout from Puhast in Estonia for the hype or tripe. I'm excited. I'm not sure Dave's so excited because he just opened the first one. And he looks a bit alarmed.
Pastore would be far more to your taste than mine.
Yeah.
If Little Earth are more to mine because they're sort of the saison-y, farmhousey stuff, Pastore are probably heading more towards the sour, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're sort of unashamedly sour. That's what they like doing.
Yes. For those of you who haven't got this beer, it's called Il Crumble. It's a pear, raspberry and honey sour at 6%, and a quick smell, and I'm smelling sort of vanilla custard and rhubarb crumble.
Yeah, I think it's just don't sniff it when the can immediately cracks, because I think it gets slightly mixed with the carbonation, and it wasn't the most pleasant. Now I've got it in the glass and it's sort of warming up a little bit and breathing. It's better. I'm getting more of the fruit and less of that just sort of funk, but not a nice funk.
Oh, it's quite tart, isn't it?
Oh, that is quite tart. So it's a fruit crumble pastry sour fermented with our fresh mixed culture, which it definitely is. And then it's conditioned on pears, raspberries, honeycomb, almond and vanilla. So you should be getting sweet honeycomb, juicy raspberry, rich pear, oats, vanilla custard.
I'm getting a lot of that, to be honest.
I'll always bow to your knowledge with these kind of beers, because they're not ones that I have too often. So I'm trying hard.
So if you haven't got it, it's a sort of deep pink, isn't it, in the glass? I'm getting pear on the nose. The vanilla is there, definitely.
It is, yeah.
There's a certain sweetness comes through from the honeycomb, but that's kind of offset by the sort of acidic nature of it as well, and the tartness. I think it all complements each other really well.
It's slightly more honey than honeycomb.
Yeah, yes, yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah. I remember coming across Pastore in the very first lockdown when we both went on a buying frenzy and bought everything we came across. And I got a delivery from them, and I was just blown away by their sours. They did this series of beers, Waterbeach sours. Waterbeach is where they are in Cambridge, on the outskirts of Cambridge. And there's a whole series of them. I had quite a lot of them, and they're just, wow. It's just, as somebody who hadn't really got into sours very much at that time, it was really eye-opening. Helped lead me down the sour path a little bit more. And if you've never had anything by Pastore, this is throwing you in at the deep end maybe a little bit, because it is very sour, isn't it?
Yeah, it's beyond tart. I think I've built up now over time. We've been doing this together and sort of drinking together. I can handle tart, and I don't mind that. And I'm fully on board with when Vault City do their weird and wacky sours. I like those because they're not really sours; they're just sort of madcap beers. This is almost one a bit more for the purists, in that you do have to have that kind of palate, and I just don't quite. I can appreciate it's nice though. It's just not quite. It's not quite for me, but it is a good sour. I can tell it's a good sour.
I didn't know this until I came to yours last time, and we were talking about Pastore, and we looked up. You thought they got a tap room, and I wasn't sure, so we looked it up, and we found out they had got one, but it only opens occasionally, just once a month. So I'm actually going there when they open on a Saturday in March. So hopefully they'll have this and lots of other stuff on.
Yes, they were one of the ones, I talked about it earlier, they were one of the places that I was aware of in the local area. But as I say, doing some sort of rudimentary Googling and whatnot has thrown up some stuff already, which is really exciting. And I did already venture out and find one of these new breweries, which I wasn't aware of, and it's called Munson's. And they are based in a village called Gaisley, which is very near Newmarket. And it's all brewed on site. They're a husband and wife team, and they've got some allegiance with Three Blind Mice, who are based in Ely. And when it was locked down, they did some canning with them. So they did sell their stuff in cans. They don't at the moment. And it's such a small scale operation that Paula does the brewing, and she brews on a Monday. And it's such a small kit that I think it produces about three kegs worth, and that's it. I can't remember the exact amount. I was told on the day, but she can encompass all styles. It's really interesting. Her calling card is a lime saison.
Ooh.
But on the menu when we went on the Saturday was that beer. There was also a West Coast. There was a 4.5% sort of New England IPA, which was based very closely on Three Blind Mice's Juice Rocket, which if you have had it, and I know they sell in cans now, and that's getting out and about. That's a good beer. And it tasted very, very similar. They do a dry hop table beer, which was great. That was really nice. And a milk stout. So she really covers the whole spectrum. And it's all done. They've just got this one. It's just a pub. It's a lovely pub. Just sort of food trucks for the food and everything. It's called the Checkers in Gaisley. It's a really nice place. Highly recommend it. And it was just a great find. It was lovely. We spent a sort of good couple of hours in there, and I could have easily spent ages in there. Proper nice place. Really nice people, and the beer's great.
I thought they were going to be more traditional, but from what you're saying, they're anything but in actual fact.
Not in the slightest. Really, like I say, and doing them all really well, which I sort of think is the mark of a good brewer. If you can turn your hand to different things and carry them all off. Like I was sort of thinking, a couple of these will be so-so, and there might be a couple of standouts, but actually everything was just of a really, really good standard.
Hopefully they're going to be coming on a future episode as well.
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking actually what I might do is go back there because any excuse. But if I take a couple of milk cartons, I can hopefully fill one up for you, and then I can hopefully get it to you, and then we can have a chat to them while you enjoy what we've got. That was my sort of experience in the wild, but you touched on it briefly with your Cloudwater. But I mean, that sounds like you had a great time.
Yeah, it was excellent. So it was like a session of curated beers with Connor from Cloudwater, and he was really engaging. He was there at Hall for a few hours and chatting us through these different beers that we got. Yeah, they just reminded me again why I like Cloudwater so much. They were one of the first craft beers that got me into the craft breweries that got me into the scene, and it was a great afternoon. I've never seen Hall so alive either. So they'd sold these tickets for this event in the shop, and the shop was just closed for the Cloudwater event for a couple of hours. But then when the event had finished, other people could come in as well, and there was a real great buzz and a vibe about the place. It was fantastic. It was a really good day.
And I think I know the answer to this, but it is there on a previous episode where I've sort of said, look, I'm sort of studiously not buying Cloudwater beers, and it is something I have been doing for a while, and I'd say my willpower is starting to crumble a little bit now. I haven't bought any, but I'm certainly starting to think about it again, because I sort of feel like perhaps they have, in my mind at least, rehabilitated their image suitably.
This is really interesting because we were talking to Connor about this, and hopefully he's going to come on to a future episode, share with you all of his thoughts. He was quite keen to stress that Cloudwater have learned quite a lot over the last few months, and acknowledges that they made some decisions that weren't perhaps as clever as they could have been in retrospect. You know, the going into the supermarkets thing being one of them. They're now out of Tesco's. Yeah, I think there's certain things they would have done differently. Paul Jones, the main man there at Cloudwater, he has withdrawn his presence on social media completely, you know, so they're just trying to restore faith with some people who they might have lost that connection with.
But yeah, and I would happily count myself as one of those. And I'd love to talk to Connor, not just exclusively about that kind of thing. You know, I'm fascinated about the beers as much as anything, because I'll never say that Cloudwater don't brew good beers, because they do. I just sort of have stopped buying on a little bit of a point of principle. But as I say, I do feel now that perhaps that's gone on long enough. I don't really think I harbour the sort of ill will that I had anymore. And if the beers are still as good as they are, then I don't want to be just cutting my nose to spite my face.
No, you miss it. For anybody who wants to deny themselves these, they're doing themselves a misjudgment, because there's some great beers out there. And tell you what was interesting, right? He was saying also how, although we have this perception that Cloudwater is quite a big operation, in terms of sales, Daya have overtaken them now, and Verdant as well, which I was quite surprised about.
That is quite surprising. I mean, I would have thought Cloudwater would have some international sales, which would be sort of...
Yeah, I'm not sure, but... So, I mean, the point being is that they're learning, they're always learning. They've been in the industry now for 7 years. They celebrated their 7th birthday just the other day, and they're still learning. They're still on an upward curve, you know.
And also, at least they've acknowledged their mistakes and they're trying to rectify them. That in itself gets me back on board.
Yeah, and their presence at Hall was part of a series of events they've been doing in small bottle shops around the country with the sole intention of connecting with people again. So, but it's all part of it. It all fits in. And something else that's worthy of mention, a little place near here in the Midlands called the Paper Duck in Harborne. Great venue. They've got 16 lines in there of craft. They did this thing where you could go and sample each beer on their 16 lines, just have a little taster, like a shot glass of each one, for £10. So you pay your tenner, then this sort of box of shot glasses turns up, 16 of them all lined up, all with corresponding numbers. And what we did is I drank them all blind. So I got my wife to pass them over to me. She knew what they were by cross-checking them with the menu, but I didn't know. God, it's difficult, isn't it?
Now, habitually, you've not been a good blind tester. How did it go this time?
Well, yeah, I'm not very well, really. No. So, I mean, a beer we've had on this show before when we did some tests with it last year with Steady Roadie Man from Daya, who we were just talking about. It's a solid beer, isn't it? You know what Steady Roadie Man tastes like. You know what to expect. I couldn't tell it was Steady Roadie Man. What's this?
Did you put that down to the size of the beer that you were drinking?
I think that's quite an important factor, yes, because a shot glass, you're not really getting much of a chance, are you?
It's obviously a byproduct, but let's all not pretend we don't enjoy it as a byproduct from time to time. Did you actually get any effects of drinking all those beers in shot glasses?
Well, I had a few pints afterwards, so that's probably where it came in. But I'll tell you what was interesting is that my favourite beer out of all the ones I tried was from a local brewery, Nothing Bound, in Bewdley, and it was one called Spilling Pictures, a New England IPA, and it was superb. It blew Steady Roadie Man out of the water. It blew everything out of the water. It was near on a 5 out of 5.
Even from a shot glass amount?
Yes.
Or did you then have a pint of it?
I actually had 2 shot glasses of that one, funny enough, and then followed it up with 2 pints as well, just to make sure it was good. And it was good. But isn't that interesting? In that case, you could tell straight away how good it was. It stacked up very, very well, better than some much bigger breweries. I think we had them as one to watch at one point on the podcast, and keep Nothing Bound on your radar, because Dave makes some astounding beers there, and they're getting out further and further, which is interesting.
How's your Pastore treating you now? I'm sort of crying off it slightly, just because
it's not getting any less tart, I can tell you that. It's sharp, isn't it? It's really sharp. Anyway, so we're on to our second beer now. Looking forward to this one very much. Must give a shout to Christian, who listens to the podcast. He's been saying, get a gold top track on the pod, will you? Because they're ace. So, especially for you and anybody else who's bought it, we have Holding Stories, an 8.5% gold top dipper. And it's got a gold top. And it's also got Citra, Nelson, Rewaka and Citra Cryo. So here we are again with a cryo hop.
Goodness, that's sweet.
I'm not so
There's a nose.
I'm not so familiar with the Rewaka hop.
I want to say Rewaka is a New Zealand hop. And have you not been reading your big book of hops that I got you for Christmas? And that's not even a joke. There it is. Oh, brilliant. There you go. So go on then. Let's enlighten ourselves.
I've got to say, it does sound as though it should be a New Zealand hop, doesn't it?
I think it is.
So let's have a look. And considered to be one of the darling hops of the New Zealand craft beer scene, Rewaka's abundant oil content is nearly twice that of its parent variety Saz, which you usually find in...
Saz you find in a lot of lagers. And things like that.
That's right. What are you making of this then, Dave?
That is good. I haven't had a track for a while, and I certainly haven't had a track gold top for a while either. I think the last time I had a gold top, I was almost pale ale juiced out. And I remember having it, and it was whichever one it was just straight white with the gold. And I remember having it, and I was like, yeah, it's fine. It's a good beer, but it's not sort of breathtaking. But having not had any track or anything like this for a while, it is a lovely reminder of how
good they are,
how good they can be. Yeah, this is really nice. The sweetness to start, I would say, is all of the Citra, and then possibly it then goes to a bit of Rewaka hoppiness, and then you get a bit of Nelson, and the Nelson is almost sort of astringent in that it makes it a little bit more. It enables you to keep going back, so it doesn't get too sort of sweet, and it gets a bit cloying, and you're a bit, I don't want to, just.
That's the
overload.
And that is the trouble with dippers. They can get like that, can't they? That cloying thing where enough now. I don't want any more. I've had enough. But this makes you keep going back.
That's borderline. I will say that is borderline. They've balanced that well, because you could almost it could easily tip into that bit of just being a bit too sweet, but it's not. It's 8.5%. Doesn't drink like it. It's just really good. It's an easy 4. It might even be a little bit more than that for me, which is a high mark, as you know. That's just a very good beer. It's really well done. You can sort of see why there's fans like Christian of this series. They're just very, very good beers.
Time now for one of our favourite parts of the podcast.
And now it's time for Hype or Tripe,
where we have a beer each, talk about it and see if it lives up to any hype surrounding it. And this one's quite interesting because it's a brew from Estonia, and the hype angle is that they're now more readily available in the UK. So we want to see if we want to be getting more of their beers, if they're good. I'm really looking forward to this one. How about you, Dave?
Yeah, I've had some perhaps in the past when it wasn't quite as easily available, and my sort of takeaway from them is their stouts are really good. Decadence, which is another one, which is a rum and raisin stout, which is also now more available in the UK, is a great beer. Well, it certainly was the last time I had it, which is probably a couple of years ago. Their pales, jury's out for me on those, but we're not hype or triping a pale, we're hype or triping a stout.
And this is called Beans and Biscuits, which sounds lovely, doesn't it? It is 9%, so not an absolute whopper by some of the standards we've had on this feature in the past. Very nicely, it's in a 330ml can, which I think is great for these big beers. I know other people disagree, and it's a bit of a talking point for a lot of people, but if you're having it yourself, you don't need a massive can, do you?
No, this is a popular refrain when we do this segment. So as you say, it's beans and biscuits. So I think they're keeping it quite simple, but what we've got is an imperial stout brewed with Columbia, La Claudia coffee and biscuits. It is a collaboration with the Kokomo coffee roasters. I mean, the can art is sort of coffee and biscuits, so it's sort of coffee and cookies.
Yeah, I'd say that's about right. I love it when these stouts pour out with a lovely, silky, luxurious head on them. And that's exactly how this is poured for me.
Oh, mine didn't.
But that's probably my bad pouring, so,
Well, I don't know. I would say my glass would lend itself to that, but mine just went straight through with no head whatsoever.
Oh, look at this.
Ah, that's a bit disappointing. Yeah, yours looks really nice. I mean, it's not the be all and end all, but
What are you making of that then, Dave?
I don't hate it.
That's always the opening gambit, isn't it? I don't hate it.
It is coffee. It's probably more coffee than it is biscuits.
There's quite a bit of sweetness there, though, isn't there?
There is enough to make it not full coffee stout, which is something I'm not a huge fan of.
Yeah, I know where you're coming from. I think it's going to be one of those where we sit on the fence here, because it's not tripe, but it's a very well-made beer,
Yeah.
which fulfills the brief. It's just, it lacks that knockout punch, doesn't it?
It's a bit safe, maybe.
I don't know if this was made with a UK audience in mind, because they've just expanded their distribution. They've got a distributor now who will bring their stuff into the UK more readily, and I wonder if this was made especially for us or not. It'd be quite interesting to know that. Could be quite a key point in it all. They've been going for quite a while now, 2011 they started, so they're into their 11th year now. They're a gypsy brewer for quite a long time, but they set out with their own brewery at the end of 2018, I think it was.
I find them an interesting brewery, and when I see their stuff, I'm interested to see if there's anything catches my eye.
I have them down, or I had them down previously, as a brewery. You'd find a lot of their beers in subscription boxes like Beer 52. They often used to turn up in there, for example.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm not sure whether they still do. And everybody has a Beer 52 subscription at some time, don't they? And I remember seeing their beers in there quite a lot back in the day when I first got into it.
I'm struggling to get too excited about it because there's not that much to get excited about sort of in terms of flavours and everything, is there? It's not a wild and wacky stout, and for some people,
well, that's good.
That's exactly what I want.
Yeah. You don't always want everything in your stout, do you?
No.
We've talked about this. Some of these stouts, there's just too much going on. This is a simple, straight up and down coffee stout with a bit of sweetness in it, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd say it probably is slightly better than a straight up and down coffee stout because they can just be very, very one note.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Almost has a little bit of barrel aged taste at times.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
So there are little bits and bobs going on. I don't think it's to sort of dismiss it as basic would be unfair on perhaps and the beer. I think you're right with sitting on the fence though. I can't say it's hype, everyone should have it. And I wonder with this because they used to be in bottles and they were 330 bottles, but a 330 bottle does stand out a bit more. The same as people like their big 440 cans. And I just wonder if that, although I like it as a measure, I wonder if people don't notice it because they sort of think of 330 cans as just having like quite insignificant stuff in it. The session-y pails and your, sort of 4% beers.
It could be a good point, yeah. I'd certainly say to people, if you see this on the shelf of your local bottle shop, grab hold of it though, because it's worth drinking. And a lot of these beers from Eastern Europe, you can get hold of them pretty cheaply over here. In fact, it's difficult these days to buy direct, but if you can, they're incredibly cheap from source.
But yeah, I think it's about £5. For that kind of money, it's...
Yeah, that's good.
It is good. It's difficult to knock that. So it's not full hype for me, but it is worth trying if you see it. I think it is a good beer. It's just not a great beer.
We'd be really keen to hear what you think about it, so let us know on Instagram. Drop us a note. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Is it hype? Is it tripe? Let us know what you think.
Daft about craft.
You've been listening to Daft About Craft, the craft beer podcast, sponsored by Hall Beer Shop in Stourbridge in the West Midlands. Check them out at hall-beer.com.
Daft About Craft, the craft beer podcast.